Good evening. Today is going to mark the very last video that I ever make in regards to my trauma. It's so funny, he knows I'm recording. Hold on. He randomly just got loud when he heard me talking. Excuse me. I'm about to record now, so I need you to be quiet. If you want to be really, you want me to close my door. Okay, see, here's the thing. You can go in your room, which is further away from my room, and then neither of us have to close our door. Do you think you could do that instead? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close my door then.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, that's fine. I'll close my door then, Erin. Thank you.
Hold on, hold on.
Oh, okay, you're gonna close my door for me?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I said, have fun with your video.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And you can say, have fun with my Legos.
Oh, have fun with your Legos. All right. So, as I said before, I'm going to, this is going to be the last video I ever make about my trauma. Yeah. I got a feather that was bigger than the last one. And it was on my lap in my car on my way home after a conversation with an acquaintance. I found feathers in such weird places. I once found one in my purse. I know what it is that has me feeling heavy. And we spoke with each other about our abuses, and she stated that sometimes she feels she made the whole thing up because her account of events tends to be inconsistent. This is common because after years of gaslighting, it does affect your memory and perception, and you also have a tendency to want to protect your abuser, which is a level of Stockholm syndrome. So in this way, I tend to be inconsistent with my account regarding my parents. In therapy, one therapist knows, another does not. When asked, sometimes I say no and sometimes I say yes. I fully recognize when rewatching my videos how I place a veil with my language, alluding that it only went on as far as emotional abuse, and recognize other times when I allude to it being more than extensive. In comment sections, I do the same thing. Sometimes I admit to it and air it all out. And in some, I am, again, very attentive to the emotional abuse. I don't speak on my mother as much as my father because I feel his actions spurred on hers. And he is the primary root of the problems within my family dynamic. However, both of the relationships with my parents were sexually abusive right up until I left. And I didn't even know that it was. So today is the day that I speak on it. And I believe it is the last thing I have to say about my trauma. It must be spoken on. It's important because it shed light on what is truly going on in society. I am not the only one, and so I speak for all. And I spoke on my algorithm in the last video that I posted. To clarify, I am as vulnerable as I am because that is how I was groomed to be. That is what I meant when I said that my vulnerability was wired wrong. By being covertly abused in this way, I was taught to be manipulated and red flags were never apparent. I could not effectively put walls up to threats because I did not see them as such. I could easily compare any abuse to my God-fearing and loving parents. This is no fault of my own. I did nothing wrong. Now that I know better, I do better. And I don't have to put the feet off in the air. So we're going to read from Silently Seduced first. This doesn't really, the first thing I'm about to read, it doesn't have as much correlation to the topic today. Excuse me, but I do want to read it because, again, I don't really want to speak on trauma anymore. But in the last video, I also mentioned codependency. And so we are going to give you, I'm going to give you the rules Okay, so the rules are what create codependency in this family dynamic. And it says codependency is a dysfunctional. Oh, today we're reading from Silently Seduced. Since I gave away the other one, I had to find, I didn't have to find a topic. It clearly meant that I was done with that book. Now we move on to the something. He went more in depth with this than she did. So codependency is this dysfunctional pattern of living and problem solving, which is kept in place by a set of rules within the family system. These rules make healthy growth and change very difficult. So here are the rules, and I can guarantee everyone that they recognize these rules within their own thinking patterns and their own family dynamic. I can guarantee it because a lot of you say these things in your videos. And just so you know, I'm not just speaking to tarot readers. This is for everybody. And we'll get in deeper into what I have to say about it. But here we go. The rules described are as such. 1, it is not okay to talk about problems. 2, feelings should not be expressed openly. 3, communication is best if indirect, with one person acting as messenger between two others. Triangulation. 4, be strong, good, right, and perfect. Make us proud. These are unrealistic expectations. 5, don't be selfish. 6, do as I say, not as I do. 7, it is not okay to play or be playful. And 8, don't rock the boat. These are the rules that silence you. These are the rules that mess up relationships. 1, if any relationship that I had was based off of something someone said and you never spoke to me about it, the only reason you were comfortable with that is because it was made something that was made comfortable in childhood. Nobody gets alarmed during triangulation because you're all used to triangulation. Okay? Your mother told me to tell you XYZ. Your aunt told me to tell your aunt told me to tell you that your cousin said XYZ. They'll put as many people as they need in the middle of it that never even had a conversation. So I just wanted to let someone know, I see this exactly as it is for a lot of people that I've dealt with in the past. It's okay. We were all raised with these same. Triangulation was a form of communication. Subliminals were a way of communication. Instead of directly speaking about your feelings, these are all the ways that they make it so that we can't get out, so we can't follow our spirit. So I just wanted to bring that up. So we're going to move on to when a child is betrayed by a parent's love. Is chapter 2. I'm going to read a lot. I'm actually going to read a lot from this chapter. Incest confuses and stirs us. The word is usually used to describe sexual contact between parent and child. Webster's New World definition defines incest as sexual intercourse between persons too closely related to marry legally. There are both overt and covert forms of incest. Overt incest occurs when there is a sexual contact in any dependent relationship involving blood relatives, the most obvious being between parent and child. A more inclusive definition is given by Mike Liu in Victims No Longer, where he states incest is a violation of a position of trust, power, and protection. It is the dependency in these relationships that is exploited by the adult for their sexual needs that crosses the incestuous line. As we shall discuss later, this is the same dependency that is leveraged by the parent to turn a child into a surrogate partner. Sexual contact in dependent relationships is never justifiable because there is always a loss of choice. People in dependent relationships seldom challenge those in positions of authority, even when they feel victimized and violated. This is especially true when the violation is between parent and child. One of the ways parents justify their behavior is to believe that this is my child, so I can do what I want. Children are not property, and I've already expressed this. This is also my own belief. Children are not property. They are not accessories. They are beings that were given to you. You are just simply a vessel into how they are delivered here, but they have their own purpose in this world, and it has nothing to fucking do with you. They feel terrified and degraded when a parent or any adult is sexual with them. Cooperation does not equal enjoyment. They are too scared, too emotionally needy, or too starved for affection to say no. Even if children report that at some level they enjoyed the sexual contact, it is still emotionally damaging. And this comment supports what I said about sexuality. Even if the child, I read that already. Children are generally too needy and confused to understand inappropriate sexual touch. Their enjoyment is at some level a source of guilt and shame later in life. It was my fault because I enjoyed it and didn't say no. All my life I carried guilt because I thought I seduced my father. It wasn't until I went over the wreckage of my life that I realized I was a victim of incest. Historically, most reports of overt incest involve girls. However, many boys have been sexually violated by both men and women. Unfortunately, instances of boys being violated have been underreported. This is beginning to change thanks to the efforts of groups like Male Survivor. Reported cases generally involve an adult man with a boy. However, many boys report being sexually violated by their mothers, stepmothers, aunts, female neighbors, and babysitters. Sexual stereotypes about men contribute to the underreporting of boys who are incest victims. For example, the myth that men are just more sexual than women and always want sex suggests a young boy would be welcoming to sexual stimulation by an adult woman and would not necessarily feel victimized. Again, what this just said confirms what I'm saying about sexuality, because of everything I said in that video. Go watch that video. Anyway, on the contrary, a young boy just learning about his body and sexuality is overwhelmed to have a woman touch him in a sexual way. One man described his shame and confusion during his childhood relationship with his mother. He goes on to say, "My mother always insisted on washing my genitals, even when I was old enough to do so. Sometimes it was embarrassing, other times I enjoyed it, and I didn't know what to think. Sometimes she'd give me kisses on the lips that seemed to last too long, and I would often find myself sexually aroused when I looked at her. I privately felt I was strange, and I worried that someone would find out. To this day, I feel like I was some kind of pervert because I was sexually aroused by my mother's presence." A victim of overt incest commonly reacts by internalizing fault. In other words, the victim feels responsible for what occurred. This internalization of fault or guilt inhibits healthy expression of anger. Instead, self-hatred festers. The expression of anger is necessary, however, in healing and letting go process of an incest victim. Overt incest is one of the most frightening and traumatic experiences a young girl or boy has to endure. A common myth is that overt incest is the exception rather than the rule in American families. This is not the case. The National Center for Victims of Crime reports that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will have experienced an episode of sexual abuse by the time they are 18 years of age. And another myth is that most sexual abuse is perpetrated by strangers or non-family members. But in fact, according to Child Help, 68% of all childhood sexual abuse is committed by family members. Yet, as traumatic and injurious as overt incest is, healing is possible if adults are gently guided and supported through the pain and into expression of their feelings. Victims have to be encouraged to express anger and separate from the shame and guilt. They need to be reassured that they did not cause the incest. Over time, this approach helps victims grieve the loss of their sexual innocence. Expressing the sadness and shedding tears permit a cleansing from the incest experience. In its place grows comfortableness with one's sexuality and the hope for a healthy sexual future. Generally, incest victims who do not recover are the ones who keep the experience a secret, deny it ever occurred, or minimize its effects. In these cases, comments frequently include statements like, well, it only happened once, maybe a couple of times, or it's easier to just forget about it. As a result, the victim remains stuck in the guilt and shame. This contributes to dissatisfying intimate and sexual relationships. Victims need support and appropriate professional guidance to recover from the violation. Incest victims who report their experiences to a helping professional may find that they are not believed. Worse, they are sometimes accused of being the seducer. This furthers the shame and is another violation. Appropriate professional guidance that does not further the shame is available and should be sought. Support groups such as Incest Survivors Anonymous and Survivors of Incest Anonymous are available for help. If children are discounted by a helping professional or any adult, they fall into deep despair. Helping professionals must be willing to follow through and intervene when necessary. A helping professional who receives a report of incest and consciously chooses not to take appropriate action participates in the victimizing process. This is also true if a child goes to one parent complaining that the other is sexually abusive. For that parent to minimize or deny the violation is to become a participant in the incest. And the child is being abused by both parents through the direct sexual contact of another and the failure to protect by the other. Victims of covert incest, also referred to as emotional incest, suffer pain similar to that of overt victims. Understanding covert incest as a sexual violation is less clear since direct sexual contact does not occur. This is not to imply that it is easy to identify or sort feelings of overt incest. It's not. However, similar feelings and dynamics are at work with covert incest. Although estimated numbers of our overt incest victims exist, similar statistics are not available regarding covert victims. The numbers are potentially staggering since the possibility for covert incest exists anytime a chronic break occurs in the emotional, spiritual, or sexual bond between parents. Covert incest occurs when a child becomes the object of a parent's affection, love, passion, and preoccupation. The parent, motivated by the loneliness and emptiness created by a chronically troubled marriage or relationship, makes the child a surrogate partner. The boundary between caring love and incestuous love is crossed when the relationship with the child exists to meet the needs of the parent rather than those of the child. As the deterioration of the marriage progresses, the dependency on the child grows, and the opposite sex parent's response to the child becomes increasingly characterized by desperation, jealousy, and a disregard for personal boundaries. The child becomes an object to be manipulated and used so the parent can avoid the pain and reality of a troubled marriage. And the child feels used and trapped. These are the same feelings overt incest victims experience. Attempts at play, autonomy, and friendship render the child guilt-ridden and lonely, never able to feel okay about his or her needs. Over time, the child becomes preoccupied with the parent's needs and feels protective and concerned. And it is a psychological marriage between parent and child that results, and the child becomes the parent's surrogate spouse. A healthy emotional, sexual, and spiritual bond between parents creates an unspoken, unseen boundary that properly channels sexual feelings and energies. When a child grows up in a family in which the marriage is chronically disturbed, sexual feelings and energy are never put into perspective. To the child, the parent's love feels more confining than freeing, more demanding than giving, and more intrusive than nurturing. The relationship becomes sexually energized and violating, even without the presence of sexual innuendos, sexual touch, or conscious sexual feelings on the part of the parent. The chronic lack of attachment in the marriage is enough to create an atmosphere of sexualized energy that spills over to the child. The sexual energy or tension created in a relationship of covert incest is more akin to young love than a caring parent. So, on to the last little bit I'll read here. was suggested that Vicky's relationship with her father was a significant reason for her pain and struggles. She protested, "I can see that he was the one who loved me, but I get sick to my stomach and frightened thinking about looking at my father's relationship with me." After months of therapy, Vicky began to let herself in on the pain and violation created by her father's relationship with her. She also began to recall events from her childhood. She reported that throughout her childhood and sometimes as an adult, she would have what she thought was a dream. "A dark-figured man keeps coming toward my bed, but I can't see his face. The dream always stops there. I always wake terrified and confused. I know who that man is," she said. "It's my father. I saw him in the dream last night. He was touching me sexually. I can't believe it. It must have happened about age 4 or 5. That was not a dream I was having, but a memory. I can see him. I don't want this to be true, but I can smell him like it was happening now. The scent of his cigarettes and booze is right there." And so that's where I'll end from the book. I don't really read from this book a lot. I feel like Patricia Love, her book was really, really in depth. He's the originator of covert emotional incest, though. This is how you get so many people into the business of sex without their knowledge. I am going to read a comment from a 60-second video about Freemasons. I went off in the comment section. I think what I have to say in it completely sums up what needs to be said. There isn't a whole lot of context. The exchange that happened prior to, we'll just start with the insult I received and my response. It is always interesting to me where I decide to divulge this information because I can't always say it's a decision. Sometimes it just comes out. I don't even know why in that particular area I didn't expect any support or anything. I got it though. I did. Somebody liked my comment, but typically I try to go somewhere where there's like-minded people, but for some reason, I was led over there. You know what I'm saying? So the person said to me, "Hello, Seventh God. Unfortunately for you, the only way I could see you ever making it in the news is if you do some truly maniac shit like murder. Please don't do that." And so I said, "That's unfortunate because I am a really kind person. The people who talk like I do and you consider mentally ill are actually the good guys. Do mentally ill harm people? Yes, but let me enlighten you on how it gets to that point. 10 years ago, I was in a psych ward for attempting suicide, the only murder I'd commit. And actually it was for the dog, but that would have been just a whole different discussion. We're just gonna keep it simple. And there was this lady there talking just how I am now, crazy and no way it's possible type shit, I thought. After what I have discovered and experienced in my own life, it's probably karma to have some stranger judge me in the same way. But everything she said was a startling catalyst of the realization of my own similar reality. I couldn't see it then because it required extensive brainwashing. But now that I do see it, I can't unsee it. I was adopted by pedophiles and raised by them only to be so heavily brainwashed and isolated that I witnessed the abuse of my own kids with no idea it was happening. Imagine how mortified I was at the age of 30 when I realized that I was being subtly sexually abused my entire life, was having men orchestrated into my life to repeat my traumas, and to have children with me so that I would be trapped with my parents and they would have an endless supply. They would undermine my independence. They would sabotage my therapy so I could never get down to the bottom of my mental health issues. I was depressed. I was suicidal. I felt no joy. So one day I left my kids with their fathers to get help. This is what I discovered after peeling back the layers to illness. Of course, I started with the abandonment of the adoption, and I discovered my family. In therapy docs from 2014, I had told my therapist I felt that my family was watching me and knew who I was. Fast forward to 2018, I found this to be true. It was about their energy signatures. I could feel their energy. As I resolved this, the other disgusting stuff I dealt with started to stick out like a huge elephant. I couldn't for 30 years express what my parents were doing. First, because they made me dependent on their words. I didn't know I was lacking education of my body or sex education. This repression of trauma spurred on reaction because who wouldn't be depressed if at the age of 24, you can't have visitors, you have a curfew, all under the guise of my house, my rules, and be respectful. And every time you fall asleep on the couch, you wake up to your father naked nearby. I actually thought it was normal. As I never had anyone but my family, I didn't know what other families did, but subconscious knows that it is not. Every time I came into my money, they stole it, so I could never get away. Once I did get away, though, the intuition was through the roof. I ended up at a plantation. I looked it up to find my ancestors, and that city was Brandywine, Maryland, where apartheid happened and what spurred the change in the way children were cared for. When Kanye said slavery was a choice, initially it was. Most were voluntarily indentured, but those who violated the law knowingly risked their own freedom, as well as their children's. It was the psychological breaking that happened by their masters that kept them from running. They didn't run because they were psychologically broken. And that remains intact to this day. What's worse is the hidden knowledge that everyone was subjected to enslavement. Why is the story that it was just African descent? I said America committed a crime and these secret societies uphold it. Covert emotional incest is subtle mind control. Jenna Jameson admitted to being groomed into pornography. Britney Spears says her conservatorship was the equivalent of sex trafficking. Paris Hilton cannot sleep decades after experiencing trauma after an attempt to be conformed to her parents' strict rules. The Kardashian-Jenner clan, no comment, just observe. These are rituals. This is called spiritual binding, energy harvesting, and crown chakra blocking. Note the difference in Britney's appearance in just a short time out of her father's control. It's happening right in front of our faces. The state of society is in varying degrees of this abuse, causing a mental health spectrum and a sexuality spectrum, as well as our own personal algorithms. People like you are experiencing it to a degree that it emotionally rapes you out of empathy. You are a part of the spectrum of people who won't extend support and will speak down on those telling the truth. One, because it really is outlandish. I understand that it's unbelievable. When I finally discovered the term for these books, I was sick for months. Some of the stuff you guys already know. This person, I don't know if they've probably never heard of me and all that. So we're just, you just say certain things that y'all know, right? But it's okay. Two, because you have been programmed to do such. You cannot empathize or relate to the people who experienced it to this degree because us folks, we are the trafficked. We make the world go round. This division is intentional because covert emotional incest is what is fueling the money in the world. It's what's fueling the entire states known for overt incest, and these people are not doing it out of guided choice. They are being groomed. The villains in my story are Bible thumpers. The woman who birthed me had a father who recorded gospel records, and I grew up in one of the most popular megachurches of the 90s, what some consider normal. The truly deranged, crazed, insane are the ones praying to God on TV screens, at church every Sunday, Wednesday, and every other Saturday for outreach, getting complimented for their children and responding, "Oh, I know, thanks. I'm such a good mom, but please pray for this one daughter. She has problems." Motherfuckers, look, we won't get into that woman. She was far worse than her husband, and I'll add that she has a top secret security clearance. My baby, it's deep. You have someone in your life right now that can't get their shit together. The whole family targets them, calls them a loser or crazy, refuses to help them for fear of enabling. You may even look at yourself with pride and ego, proud that you are not like them. The family is severely fragmented, a few members that are extremely tight-knit while others are obviously on the outskirts. You have trouble being intimate, you lack You lack trust, poor self-image, to blame. You may have a parent that shows a lack of interest in you, so you may call the other family member privileged or spoiled as a result of the over-involvement of a particular family member in their life. You have all that. You're ungrateful. You're disrespectful. I had to do it with no help. There's no excuse for your failure. This put down instantly boosts your self-esteem. You sure told them. The truth is, this loser has been abused, and the family was strategically gaslighted to enforce this abuser. The entire family is under the spell of one or many perpetrators, because as we grow up, we then normalize and act out subtle abuses we witness. What was one abuser in childhood turns into 10 when we reach adulthood, and as we mimic the actions of our caregivers to one another. You might want to reassess that loser of a family member. They need the help of a friend in validating their trauma, not another conversation with someone they are paying to listen to them, or another drug to mess with their brain functions. Psychology is pseudoscience. If we recognize the root, there is no illness to treat. The DSM-5 is clearly marked as identification of coping and defense mechanisms, meaning all have a root of trauma. The name of that trauma is called covert emotional incest. It was rooted in society through indentured slavery, the price to afford a life in the New World America that included all races and ethnic backgrounds. So when they traveled home, they infected their own cultures with the belief systems that hold up the abuse. I don't tell my story to look for empathy, or because I lack boundaries, or because I want to argue. I tell it because almost every family has at least one person experiencing this. The bigger the family, the more people experiencing the trauma. Not all will be as severe as myself, but the severity determines the illness. So bring my initial statement in this comment full circle. Murderers are actually the most severe victims in the spectrum. They go on to reenact their traumas and maximize them by committing murder, either as a coping mechanism or as a defense mechanism. If one person can be helped by me sharing my experiences in the comment section of a 60-second video, I will do it, and I have been for a year. Don't worry about me, I'm straight. I'm here to help. And if you read this comment in full, more power to you. I hope you speak your own truth and spread the word. Light and love, because I'm not a love and light individual. If you're in the dark, you can't see love. Let's spread some light first. And really quick too, that's all that a thrill seeker is. Their coping mechanism is a thrill. It is a thrill to kill someone. Intentionally. I'm pretty sure if it's in self-defense, I'm certain it's very frightening as well. The spectrum is either going to be thrilling and exciting or fear. So, what's interesting about this is that soon after I had made that post, I was driving home and noticed when I entered the city, there's a sign congruent with their welcome sign. It's a Freemason sign. Yep. Don't get me into that right now. But anyway, I also received a vision when I saw the feather. What I have experienced with my adopted family is a result of a known system within the adoption agencies between pedophiles. Between them, it's not known to the public. It's known to the pedophiles, which adoption agencies they can go to and get a child. Or work with a adoption agency to get a child. Also, when I was adopted, the system was a little bit different. My parents would have never been able to obtain a child because they had a lot of interaction with children's services. There's no way. Somebody did something. I need you to go back out and enjoy your toys. I'm almost done. I'm in my last couple paragraphs, okay?
You mean 2 minutes?
I don't mean 2 minutes. I mean about 5 minutes.
Like 2 minutes and 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
And now what?
And then, I don't know. What is it you want?
And give you the phone.
Oh, God. That's what you want? I don't know if you're going to be able to get the phone. Because then I have to upload it to YouTube. Okay? But I'll think about it. Go ahead and head back out. So, go on, please.
Can you just be quiet?
No, because you never are. You never are.
You gotta be kidding.
No, here, take this and go.
What? Okay.
That's all I have for you. That's all I have. So you can have this. I'm gonna sit it right here. But that's all I have for you right now because I'm still recording my video. So, I originally didn't think that I was going to go into detail about this situation, but I am to do so. I once stated that the books describe my life to a T, and this is because the soul and body are unique, but the brain and mind functions are not. The zodiac has been altered to describe traits of each sign as a fact, when they actually have been studying people who are mentally ill and what these qualities people are born. They have actually been studying people who are mentally ill and what qualities they will possess born under that sign and under these circumstances. The brain has specific default settings that a large group of people can possess and be identical. This is how you create a hive of people who possess the same values and thought processes, even if they are wrong. You know, like the Borg, 7 of 9, Star Trek. So I want to get into detail about a specific incident. And I also want to note the memory was kicked off with the man of the hour. The last excerpt that I read from the book today is and was so shocking to me when I heard it. I began to throw things within the house and I was shattered. I, for a long time, as I can remember, had those same dreams. The earliest was around 3 years old, but they went on for a really long time. And sometimes I still dream them, but this time now they're dreams. When I was young, they weren't dreams. It was just a state of unconsciousness. In my sleep, it was happening, which is why it carried itself like a dream and not as a memory. Also, there is the possibility of dissociation after long term. So an out-of-body experience is happening, which also has the same effect as dreaming. You're not really there, you're just watching. These memories came back from to the forefront by scent. The man of the hour randomly approached me with a tray of cologne in late fall of 2019. I came across one. No name on the bottle, but it upset me, made me sick to my stomach. I told him and he promised never to wear it. I knew I made the link immediately. It was my father, but I didn't say that. And at this point, I still had no clear understanding as to why. There were actually two, but I only focused on the one. The other had the name clearly on the bottle, so I had a flashback to watching my father dress and spray his chest with it. Hey, can you go in your room? Because that's really loud. Can you go in your room, please? It still isn't quiet enough. These walls are like paper thin. Like joint paper thin, not regular paper you write on. I started my cycle at the age of 11, just a few weeks before entering the 6th grade. I once said that my first period was like a Carrie moment. It wasn't as graphic, of course, but the lack of knowledge and the alarming fear that something was wrong, as well as having this happen in front of several people, was way more embarrassing than it needed to be. Also remember that I did not go to the 5th or 8th grade sexual education classes, so I missed the information I needed to know about my cycle and pregnancy. Excuse me. 2 days before it started, the ambulance was called to my home and I was experiencing painful cramps. They asked my mother if it was my time. And I distinctly remember my mother almost sounding offended as she told them that it would not happen until I was 13. Of course, this spurred on questions that weren't answered. I was just assured that I was fine. 2 days later, it begins, and I run down the stairs to alert my mother of the findings in my underwear, and she shoos me and ignores me until I holler in front of her friends and their kids and even some of the neighbors' kids that there was blood in my panties. She almost looked angry. That night, my father came into my room, sat at the end of the bed, and announced that I was a woman now, and we wouldn't be laying together anymore. I was initially confused because I can remember laying with my dad in his bed or on the couch, but never in my bed. And this is why the memory stuck with me, because I didn't know that my father was entering my bed, not consciously. And the conversation always bothered me. A few months go by, they're monitoring, and it just felt uncomfortable because on top of that, my father had distanced himself and he had asked to see my purse once. The only time I carried a purse was when I was on my cycle, and so he opened it to find pads in it and barked at me never to let a man into my purse. I also discovered no one had their cycles yet, including the neighbor that was a couple of years older. It garnered jealousy when she found out, and she even stopped playing with me for a few weeks, only to sink and have her cycle with me the next time. This caused me to be horribly embarrassed to announce it. So at this time, I was a babysitter and I had a paper route, a little princess of pinnacles, and was able to ride my bike to the store so I could get my own products. I just decided to keep it to myself. A month goes by and I'm asked if I started. I say no. Another month goes by. I asked again and I say no. But then this time I overhear them talking about me being pregnant. This is the first time I understood the correlation between periods and pregnancy, but I didn't know how one got pregnant and knew that I was not. So I told them I started my period and told them every time until I became pregnant with my oldest child. So all of these memories began to plague me, from the moment I smelled that cologne. They weren't put together until I listened to the book, and it was startling. All these memories tied together. I remember being upset about the memory regarding pregnancy because I thought I was being accused. But I wasn't allowed to run around with boys at the age of 11, and why would they think I was pregnant at 11 years old? And who the fuck do they think I'm fucking at 11 years old? I wasn't being accused. My father was. I had a friend. She's deceased now, but her life makes so much more sense. Pretty much everyone's life around me does. I now see the parallels to us and our mothers. I knew her mother, and one thing our mothers had in common is that they made it very clear that they were not having relations with their husbands. They let you know that they feel undesirable to their husbands. And her mother implied she hadn't even consummated the marriage. I really want people to look around. Find the person within your family that is like me and help them. Maybe they aren't still sexualizing them within adulthood, but maybe they have children. And maybe they're stuck in the house with a much older family member. Please check on them. Please. The signs were there though. I can remember being really, really young and masturbating. Around 3 years old. I'm certain it's 3 years old because of the house. We moved after we got my sisters. And you're consciously aware of your age. And so I knew I was 5 years old when we lived somewhere else. So, excuse me. When we got my sisters, I was 3. And I can remember, that's how I know how old I was, because I got my sisters when I was 3. We lived in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, when I was 5 years old. And so in between the ages of 3 and 4 is when this stuff was happening, because I can distinctly remember the day we went to go get my sisters. And I can remember in that time the things that I was doing, what I was caught doing. I was caught doing stuff and getting in trouble for it and stuff like that. But the only reason I was doing it is because of this. So, I would place things inside myself. There is a difference between self-pleasure and self-discovery, and I am very aware that that line was crossed. I can also remember going to the doctor with complaints of lower extremity and bowel issues, often, and even being told by my mother that I was making up the pain I was experiencing. She also abused me, and even in adulthood would send me naked pictures and force me to compliment her, and occasionally she slept beside me naked. I once asked who was the original narc, and I still can't tell. I lean towards him because I remember my father asking us if they got divorced, who would we live with, and we all in front of her said him. So that is a tactic. She didn't want to part with the kids, so she stayed, and it's possible she was trapped, but we have our own choices to make, and it doesn't negate the fact that she was doing it too, and not just to me. I have hesitated to post this because I thought I would keep this in forever. I just wanted to keep it a secret and move on, just literally just like the book. I don't gotta tell too many people about this. I could just keep this to myself, but again, this is my purpose here. So, I have to be honest about that experience. And it causes, to be open and honest about it, though, it does cause a lot of shame-based. I can recognize those shame-based feelings about it. I really can. So, I can recognize the shame-based feelings regarding it. For me, it's disgust. I actually don't hold a lot of shame-based feelings. It's disgust. It's pure disgust. How fucking dare you? How fucking dare you? Where the fuck you think all the entertainment comes from? All these stories come from Precious, the movie Precious. Her mother literally thought that an infant could seduce someone. This is it right here. And my mother felt the same. My mother felt the same. Because she didn't save me. She didn't help me. And she was just as awful. So, I did still have to fight the shame in regards to it. Remember, I said it's not hard to take accountability for me when it's wrong. The hardest part is about not turning the experience inward. And because I haven't turned any of my experiences inward is why I have less narcissistic traits than the next guy. Because my narcissistic traits come from a place of lack in the third tier, where a narcissist comes from a place of shame. There's a difference. I'm doing it to compensate. They're doing it because they're ashamed. So, I don't feel any shame. That again has been my biggest battle, and I have defeated it. I don't put defeat out in the air because I haven't been defeated. I feel no shame. I didn't do anything wrong. So, narcs turn this experience inward, sadly, to an experience that is no fault of their own, snowballing a lack of accountability everywhere else. And that's why it's a shame-based personality disorder. This is how a narc is created. I said it. I'm going to keep saying it. Excuse me. It creates the entire spectrum of mental illness. Excuse me. If you are like me, I want you to know that it is okay. You have to fight the shame because you didn't do anything wrong, and you have to speak the truth. Excuse me. You have no reason to feel shame at all. None. Just tell the truth. You don't have to do it on the airwaves for everyone to see. That's why I'm doing it. Okay? But it's okay. You know? I'm very sorry that happened to you.